Yep, we're
still using wires from that technology here? Okay.
we're good. We're live.
We're live, yes. So welcome to RocketStar and welcome to NewSpace. Carpe Asha, that's my friend there. We're lucky to be here today because NewSpace decided to invite us to talk about ourselves and not have anybody else talk other than us, which is nice.
Serves us well.
Yes, it does. So I think before we start talking about the nitty gritty of what we're about, I'd like to show a short video that we have on our website. So how do we set that up quick?
I think we can do it through this. Yep.
I can't use this. This is a Mac.
Escape.
Escape. Oh, escape? Oh, there you go. See? All right, here, I gotta do this. That's why he's here. Yeah, this is my strategic experience engineer, otherwise known as C. And no, he's not a yes man. Beautiful. I'll just pop out of the way so we can get a full view here. Well,
from a humanity standpoint, this really could be a game-changing event. Not an iPhone event, not a computer event, a steam engine event, a Wright Brothers event, a diesel engine event, where it just has this universal application that touches not just commercial, but human lives.
The team we've put together is really the team that's going to take this to the next level.
RocketStar has a very viable design to get us a reusable single-stage to orbit rocket that will bring down the costs of access to space.
More and more individuals and companies will have access to doing fantastic stuff that has not been possible in the past.
NASA tried to do this in the early 90s. They ran into technical difficulties, but we're 25 years later now, and the ball hasn't been picked up where it was dropped.
We're not reinventing the wheel, we're resurrecting it. RocketStar is building a Aerospike engine. That is an altitude compensating engine that will get a reusable launch vehicle to orbit and back without having to drop anything.
It's clear that the companies that are on the forefront of this effort to commercialize space exploration are trying to drive towards reusability of the rocket vehicles, bringing these things back to Earth so that they can be retooled and reused without having to build one every single time that you want to go out into space.
An Aerospike is an old concept. Prototypes were developed, as its name implies, a spike that the thrust is pushed onto, and the thrust, depending on the angle, can give you different types of efficiency.
What we're talking about is enabling a single stage to orbit concept, where you don't have to bring just pieces back, but you bring the whole spacecraft back.
Pieces of rockets just floating around our planet right now in space. Environmentally, it would be great to not have all this extra junk, but to be able to have a reusable resource is always the way to go, in my opinion.
On the simulation side, we have great computational tools available which are not available 10 years ago. We have great amount of computing power available very, very cheaply.
Materials now are much more thermally resistant than they were 40 years ago.
What we're doing is using the research that has been done since the 1960s on this particular type of rocket design and bringing it to fruition. We think that the research that we're doing here at Stony Brook, that we've figured out what those technological tall tent poles are. These are sort of solvable problems that will enable this rocket to be a viable launch vehicle.
It's now just a question of expertise and manpower, and that we have an overabundance of, especially here at the university.
Stony Brook has a long history in studying the the geology of the solar system goes back to the Apollo program.
The lunar module was built on the island. The first moon rocks were analyzed here at Stony Brook University.
And that's continued through to today with our study of Mars, of the moon, of asteroids throughout the solar system. We have a lot of expertise in that area.
Some of the best scientists aspire to work at universities. So if you want to get good people, you have to look at not only industry but also at the universities to make sure you're tapping all the right people.
Given the resources that exist in Long Island, if we had a scaled-down prototype of an Aerospike rocket, conduct a burn test to see if this design can match some of that performance that has been predicted computationally, and then to see if some of the challenges that have been presented in the literature regarding testing and evaluation of these concepts can be replicated in a laboratory environment.
One of the designs we made was for this rocket to be liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen as the fuel, in a process that has actually been discovered and utilized at NASA.
It's very important to understand the water content of Mars to be able to quantify the amount of water in the rocks and to know which regions have the most water so we know where to land.
Oceans of water are locked up in the crystal structures of minerals, on Mars. So there's plenty of water there. Comets are filthy with water. There's water all over the place in comets, and there's billions of them out there.
The hardest part is not getting there. The hardest part is getting back in one piece. So if we can do that reliably and use things out there versus having to take it with us, it would totally change the industry as we know it.
Spending less money on rockets, we're spending more money on science, and that's what really excites me.
NASA has a budget, a fixed budget. So if you think about, shrinking the part of the wedge that is money spent on rockets, right, then it opens up a whole new part of that wedge for actually flying more missions.
For me, as a space scientist, as a geologist, I want more money spent on satellites in orbit around Mars and the moon than I do on the launch vehicle to get those things there. And this technology, this engine, is what is going to enable that. It's low-hanging fruit that's right for the picking.
People that said they were part of Apollo, all those people that said they're part of this particular program, now you have a space program that you're part of. All of this stuff has been invented. We're just like a Lego builder putting it all together and sending it out there. The risk takers out there that have always been at the forefront of the entrepreneurial edge are now getting into this game.
If there is a critical mass of people that are involved in this project and people that are willing to keep working on this project, then this can become a reality.
What we need are the startup funds to actually go finish the design and cut metal and do our burn test. And once we do our burn test and we have the data that shows that how efficient this rocket is and how much better it is and everything else, then we're golden.
This really is happening. I mean, kidding aside, egos aside, we're kind of just, the custodians of the next generation of science, but all of the stuff you see on TV is now extremely possible. I've spent since 1959 in the aerospace industry, and I am still in the aerospace industry, and I think this would be a tremendous step forward for it. We're actually all coming together as humans and deciding, okay, this should happen. Let's make it happen together. And I'm really happy that this actually can happen, not because of an investment bank, not because of a government entity, but because of people. It's people helping other people get to space.
So that's our mandate, everybody. We're helping people get to space. And we're doing it in a way that ideally will be a single stage to orbit, reusable launch vehicle. But depending upon the client, they may want to use different stages, multi-stages, what have you. I think we're talking to starfighters, and they're thinking about just flying the thing up and launching it off of their F-104. But everybody I talked to, when I was working on coming up with this project, and we were trying to form a company, everybody had these amazing products, these amazing inventions, like, what Ragnarok's doing. But what I noticed was everybody's either trying to make it smaller, trying to make it cheaper, more effective, so that they can get on the payload quicker. And why would they do that? It's because it's still so goddamn expensive to get to space. And the only real way to reduce that cost, besides what Elon's doing over at SpaceX, is make it reusable. So we did a lot of research on it, and up until last year, I was thinking about starting this company and starting with an Aerospike after doing some research. But then my friend Rob, who you saw in the video, who's a co-founder of NASA, said to me, he pulled me aside, we sat down for dinner, and he's like, look, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, what? And this is the guy that used to play ping pong with Wernher von Braun during the missile tests and everything, and he was working on Gemini and Apollo missions. He's like, Chris, the industry needs this. You need to get on this. And you better do it now, because I don't know how long this window's going to last. So I'm like, okay, I don't have the money, but I'll find it. And that's where we started. So we did our feasibility test last year. This is kind of goes over a little bit. I just want to point out some diagrams to kind of point out the differences.
I don't know Max either. So.
In the business, we call this dead air. Oh. You just like maximize it.
There it is.
Press play. Press play? Okay. Well, that's easy. So you just tap left or right? And, okay. I just really want to get the pics. Okay, so you have your basic rocket engine. Everybody knows it. Oxidizer, fuel, pumps, combustion chamber, nozzle. I didn't want to change any of the combustion chambers or the fuel or the pumps. That somebody else can do that. They can worry about the flight test and worry about the pressure and everything else. I just want to worry about this stupid thing, which hasn't changed since the 50s. Why hasn't it changed? Because it works. But you have to throw it away every time. So there's several different shapes you can work on. Nobody wants to use a cone because you double your weight. These other things don't even pay attention to. The ones we targeted was the spike, where it kind of takes this and turns it on its head. So if you have a glass, instead of the stuff coming out of the bottom of the glass, you turn the glass over and it's running down the sides of it, like you would on the spike here. The combustion chambers are outside, open to the air. Biggest problem you have with these things, other than they work great for getting all the way up there, the Saturn rockets were amazing. This pressure is constant. When you go through the atmosphere, pressure changes because there's less atmosphere as you go up. So as this gets bigger, this remains the same. Your thrust coefficient goes way down. You have to ditch it for a bigger one. So everybody, no matter how cost efficient, no matter how amazing their engineers are, they have to dump this and use a different one.
I can ask a quick question?
Sure.
If you don't mind. You said this is what we've been using since the 1950s, and I was wondering if you could sort of clarify who exactly we is, because there's sort of the U.S. government, NASA, and maybe Russia, and like since the 2000s you've had sort of SpaceX as well that's been doing something.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how they all.
No, this is pretty much everybody. I mean, you can talk about the RD-180s. You have Launch Alliance uses it. You have SpaceX used the Falcon 9 rockets. Everybody since the 50s uses a version of this nozzle. Because it works, even if it doesn't work the best, it still works. You don't have to worry about that. You just have to worry about other things. There's a lot of things to worry about when you put a rocket up. I mean, if you watch some of the old V2 videos when they were just using paddles to like change your trajectory because they couldn't radio contact with the damn thing, it was just one after another going up and blowing up. So what we're working on is what's called an Aerospike. The reason why it was called that is because, number one, it's outside to the air, and it kind of looks like a spike. It's truncated because in order to get the theoretical maximum, you'd have to go all the way down to basically infinity and create this giant spike all the way down. But if you truncate it here and you have a base bleed coming out with some interior injectors, you can effectively create another pressure against your nozzle to increase the lift as you go off the launch pad. There's many different ones that have been used. This is one that they used at Caltech. It worked, but the thing cracked in half and it went through the air because the titanium wasn't up to grade. But they since have flown another one there's an issue with this I'll go into in a minute, why I don't think it's ideal. This is kind of what Firefly is using, which is kind of like halfway between the two. My company, we've actually reached out to Firefly because we're not about building the rockets. I don't have to worry about the programming, the software, you know, the flight testing, all the pressure testing, all the things necessary to get it up. I just want to sell you the engine, you do whatever you want. I want to be like the GE to the Boeing of space. So, but they've actually got a pretty good design, and they're kind of hitting the midpoint between loads, where instead of doing micros or the huge stuff like what SpaceX is doing, they're doing the mid-range for normal CubeSat. It's a 3 to 6U, I think. So this, in fact, is what the Aerospike does. You'll have, instead of the chamber in here where it's closed off to the air, it's open to the air. It goes down the limited side on this side, but is open to the air on the other side. So while you're on the ground, and I'll show you another slide that's a little more, that's why I brought this thing along. While you're on the ground, standard temperature and pressure holds it all in and kind of creates this nice little push to help you off the launch pad. So you get between 30 to 40% more pressure to go off the launch pad than you would with a traditional bell nozzle. You know, the stuff you see in the videos with all these giant explosions, you see the stuff taking off, completely inefficient because you still have this difference in pressure between the interior and the exterior. This is 1-to-1. This is where it's theoretically ideal when it gets into mid-range. I think between 30 and 50,000 feet. But then when they get over that into the higher, above, I think it's 118,000 feet. That's when you have way too much difference in thrust and you have to ditch. This is open. The air keeps it in to a theoretical 1-to-1 yield. And as it's going higher, the the supersonic shock waves actually keep the wake in a nice little channel. So this is what I was talking about earlier, why we kind of don't want to do toroidal aerospikes. We kind of want to work more with linear, because if you vary your thrust on either side, you can do pitch up, pitch down. You can effectively turn your rocket up or down without having to use any wings or anything like that. And you can also do fun stuff like snap rolls by doing varying different things around the other side.
And you have to understand, until now, altitude compensation has not been possible.
No.
So what this is really is just pointing to altitude compensation. You can go up, sideways, swing back around. You don't have to go just straight up.
Are the big gains at the period of liftoff, or are the big gains while you're kind of in the upper atmosphere and you're kind of keeping that size smaller?
Both.
There's both, but it really depends upon the size of the engine you use, the lift and everything else. But I would argue that the big gain is you don't have to toss it. Right. You come back down, you just refurbish, refuel for a couple 100,000 instead of a couple 100 million, and you go back up again. So that's what we're aiming to do. As comparison, there's a theoretical nice curve with the Aerospike. The bell drops off, which is why they have to, you see this crossover, they have to ditch one for another so it can come back up to the curve that you want in terms of thrust. You lose all of that ability one of the most important parts when you're doing stage separation up there. So you had a question, sorry.
Yeah, this idea of being able to compensate for altitude is really important if you're doing a single stage to orbit.
Right.
I think everybody's pretty much decided single stage to orbit is a no-go. In other words, people have tried with billions, not millions, billions of dollars to do single stage to orbit and have failed. SpaceX, I think the industry leader, has decided that staging is the right course. So doesn't that really reduce the need for a compensating nozzle?
No, Escape Dynamics is actually using a shuttle where they're going to be firing low density microwaves at a shuttle to get a fly. But in terms of the industry leader, I've also talked with Elon Musk about it, and he wants to see a burn test in the cryogenic video. And also to your point, they're working on this internally. So,
I was going to say, it's definitely a misnomer to say a no-go. It hasn't been done yet. So then, one of the questions is, and it's got to be on some of your minds, well, if, why hasn't Elon Musk done this? If this is so good and you guys are a bunch of guys from New York, why hasn't a $10 billion capitalized company done it? It's a great question. And the reason is because what do they need to do? They've got a contract with NASA. They have milestones they have to hit. If they miss them, which by the way, NASA's always kind of giving them a little extra, but at some point in time, if they miss them, their whole entire valuation structure could potentially start to break down.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're using the Falcon 9, and it's working for them. And single stage orbit isn't quite working yet, so it's not a no-go, but it's the Falcon 9 gets us where we're going. We meet our milestones, we get our funding, and most importantly, to a certain extent, our valuation, which is at $10 billion now, stays there. He would love nothing more. As we all know, reusability is something that he is called multiple times the Holy Grail, but he would love nothing more than a single stage to orbit, reusable launch vehicle with altitude compensation that has orders of magnitude more efficient than what they're using now. Now, he may find that himself over time because they're going at it. It's not their biggest thing that they're doing, but it's something he wants. He has said to us, after your burn test, there are these specific things that I want to know from you. That's all I want. Send me an email with these things, and then I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
So if those things are good enough, who knows what might happen there. I think that once we show, it's like anything in science and space, isn't it? Once you do it, then it's, oh, well, there it is. Let's use it. Let's make it, if it's that good, let's have it become a standard. Until then, they're using what they know.
What are those values of merit that Elon wants to know?
We have the liberty.
You can just give the general, you don't have to give.
Why don't you give the general?
Everything you're saying is pretty much public. So.
Yeah, so I would say at this point, I just want to see a video of the burn test and corroborating data.
Well, he's a numbers guy, so I'm sure
There's-
he wants some parameters.
Yeah, the
He's got numbers.
ISP is really important to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're estimating between 30 and 40% higher than his Falcon 9.
We'll definitely be very interested in that.
Yeah.
How soon do you think you can show that?
Good
We're
question.
we're looking at prototypes late fall to early spring next year. Again, knock on wood.
Assuming all goes
Yeah.
well and we can get the funding necessary to get to that burn test.
But one way or another, we're going to do it.
I have a question. What about curtain cooling? Curtain cooling, so you have this spike, right?
Yeah, and you're running the liquid hydrogen over
Because you
to
have
cool it. Yeah.
it's different from a bell, right? Because you have the curtain on the outside.
We're experimenting with a couple of different designs. We're doing CFD analysis now.
Right.
There's a lot of different things I could talk about that I could answer your question, but since I'm on that.
Okay. That's
But just to answer it in a general way, between materials, between a version of that, we think we've got the problem mixed. And I say think because I don't want to be hammered down to any date or whatever on video.
And we've made it no secret, I think, that during the feasibility test and really taking a look at the nature of everything,
Yeah.
where some of the hitches were with the X-33 tests, which had nothing to do with the engine per se, it really had to do with the liquid hydrogen tanks and the material that they used inside the tank. So that's an issue that we feel that we have. Is the nozzles. The nozzles are something that we have come out and said that we're really looking at in terms of patenting, using the understanding of how to design those nozzles in a way, using materials and using an understanding of the dynamics that are going to be necessary to create that efficiency. It's an area that we're really looking at, in terms of focusing on the design of those nozzles.
But just to be clear, we want the IP, we want to seek the patent, but if we don't get it, we don't really care because we want this to happen so that space can happen. And kind of, again, Elon Musk leading the way. When he gave away his patents for Tesla, we were like, brilliant. Because we all know this community is very collaborative. We're all trying to get to the same place. So if we can all help each other get there, the more the better.
Policies are just like economic drain, basically.
Yeah.
From what the community produces.
So unlike Wall Street, right? They're giving everything to those shots.
Even when I was on Wall Street, as much as the perception is true, there are a lot of people in the Shark Tank trying to bite your head off. And there are a lot of people also on the other side where they're like us, where, look, everybody eats and it's a good deal. So that's what we're looking to do because we don't want it to be one and done. We want to do return business, and return business only happens when everybody's happy or feels like they got something. So that's the kind of model we're following as we go forward with this stuff.
And, you know, we just see the Aerospike, which we're focused on now, we're dedicated, and that's our raison d'etre right now. But we are visionaries, and we are looking towards what comes after Aerospike, and we're actually even looking to like the second order past that. So this we look at as an evolutionary process that's just a series of hypersonic propulsion technologies that are going to make the solar system really accessible. I mean, we really see when we do kind of our visioning, we see in 100 years every single object, and you know, there's a lot of objects out there, you know, fully mapped, fully, you know, 3D projections, virtual reality tours. You know, it's all going to be accessible because that's just what we want. That's the dream. That's what everyone wants. So it's how far can we go to bring people to where they need to be, whether it be exploration, colonization, settlements, tourism, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to the Aerospike, part of a recovery of a single-stage orbit normally involves supersonic retropropulsion, considering that the slipstream creates the bell nozzle for you, the compensating bell nozzle.
Mm-hmm.
When the slipstream is going backwards, how does your Aerospike engine work?
There's very different solutions that we've been looking at that I can't mention, but that is a very good point. It is a very difficult thing to overcome. I've spoken to a couple of people about that. That kind of, it's similar to the base bleed idea, where you have a different fluid going around it. This is all theoretical stuff, but that's what I can talk about right now.
It's in design.
Yeah.
What kind of funding? Like, so you mentioned that you're raising funds right now. So
yeah,
what is the how much, and then what is the what do you need it for?
Right now we're seeking $250,000. Not a lot of money. It's not for monetizing the company and hiring 40,000 people. It's for getting past the next stage of development, getting a prototype, having some extra money to start knocking on doors, getting contracts, or finishing up contracts. And some private equity guys actually, well, don't you want more? I'm like, no, I don't. I want what I can use now, and then I don't really want the money. I want a partner that I can go back to and say, okay, now we're ready for the next stage. How do we do this? So
we're very milestone driven.
Yeah.
You know, we're very methodical. So we really, like anyone, but we're really passionate and dedicated and obsessed with when we say we're going to do something, doing it by that time. And as we all know, if you can do that and you can do it fairly consistently, the money's going to come in. So that's really it. I mean, the burn test to us is our holy grail, because those metrics and diagnostics from that is what Elon Musk is looking at. It's what some other people are looking at. If we can get there and it can perform even close to what we think it can, then the funding should be fairly easy. It's the funding between now and then that's really the hardest in many ways, which is much less than we're going to need after the burn test.
Yep.
And the minimum is 250,000.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably tighten it up a little bit, but I don't want to, because I want oh no money. I don't want something to blow up and like, oh my God, I can't pay for another one. If I just gotten this, I could build another one and be ready. I want to have just that extra envelope so that I can take care of it if there's a problem.
My recommendations go the other way. Go to 750,000 because rocket propulsion is fraught with explosions and damages, and sometimes it just doesn't work the way you thought it was going to work, and it gives you 3 shots. 750,000 is probably just as hard to raise as 250.
That's why we're using University of Stony Brook's mechanical engineering department. That's why we're using subcontractors. That's why we're using technical advisors. That's why we are also seeking insurance if necessary, depending upon if it makes sense.
Oh, I was going to ask you, have you considered trying to apply for an NASA SPR?
Yes.
I mean,
We already have been awarded an SPIR last year. We got awarded an SPIR this year.
oh, phase 2?
Yeah, phase 2. Yeah, but that was New York State, not NASA. We were looking at the TAF grant from NASA, but the engineers basically said we don't have.
Not ready yet.
Yeah. But
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So when you say 250K for...
He raised his hand first.
Sorry. You have been talking that you're building this engine for, and talking to SpaceX, to Firefly. So do you see this as a main application to launch nanosatellites and microsatellites, or traditional satellites like SpaceX?
Any and all of the above.
But with this $250,000, do you want to stay focused on something like to eventually partner with a company like Rocket Lab or Firefly, or more like SpaceX and NASA?
We're open to any and all possibilities. But what we'd rather do is be the standard for hypersonic travel and consultation. So you may be doing your own thing, you have your own product, but hey, we'll help you out. We'll figure out how to get it the best way possible. You give us a fee and you do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. So
to answer your question, the 250 is not going to really have anything to do specifically with partners. Sure, we're constantly talking to people, but that 250 is going to get us to the point where that burn test, and we can go, here's everything, all certified. Now let's talk. I mean, that's the calling card. That's the calling card. That's going to just be like, whoa, okay.
No, but the type of engine that you need for a company like SpaceX is much larger than a company like Firefly.
it's completely scalable. I mean, I've been talking to people in Texas, people in Florida with smaller companies that want to do micro and nano satellite launches, and it's more than I don't want to say it's completely easy, because there's always difficulties, because everybody's design is different, everybody's injector is different, so on and so forth. But it's completely achievable. Yes.
So 2 BK is like a pretty small amount. It's not going to cover labor. So is this like the prototype development? Oh.
No, this covers it.
Through the scaled prototype and burn test. That's it.
That's it.
That's as far as it goes.
That's stage one. Yeah.
So I'm just, you have the Stony Brook partnership. You're not going to utilize grad students or something?
Oh, we are. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. We're using grad students right now. We got 1 in 3 professors. Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing here, because we're all generally, I don't want to speak for everyone here, but generally we're kind of all like, it takes so much, and SpaceX isn't doing it. They've got billions, and how can you guys do this? And it's a testament really to Chris, because it's all as grassroots and as economical as you could ever do something like this. We are just biting off what we can chew. We're not getting bigger than our britches. We all, outside of the university, we have 9 to 5 jobs. So we're doing this in the morning when we wake up a few hours early, and we're staying up until early morning working on it outside of work.
You should see the text I get at 1 in the morning.
We're not paying anyone any salaries. We are doing this because of the love of it, and hopefully down the line there'll be something. But it's really about the product, about the engine, and then everything else follows. So it is done as I want to say cheaply, but the quality is incredibly high.
Yeah, we're doing this because we want to change the world, bar none.
Yeah,
and it's not. This is, everybody always says, oh, I want to change the world. Oh, come with me, I'll change the world. This will change the world. I'm telling you right now. I will go on record. I will put money down.
The burn test you're doing, how many points data will be found on figure 3?
I'd say you'd probably be in the 450 and above.
No. Oh, how many points along that graph? I see a very beautiful projected dash line at the top at 410, starting at 410, an ISP at 410 and rising at altitude. How many data points will you confirm on that graph?
Well, we can't, because from a burn test you can't do altitude testing, because that's on that graph. So 0. Yeah. No, but we're actually talking with people to do exactly that, where they actually launch this from 50,000 feet. So that we can see
how much money will that cost?
Be a partnership, so it would be practically 0, if anything. Yeah.
I can mention that there are sounding rockets. You can probably add yours as a second stage.
That's another thing we've been exploring with some other companies that I can't mention, unfortunately.
I was going to also mention that this might have applications for missiles, right?
Sure. Unfortunately, yes. I kind of want to get that later, but I know you're listening, my government, and we're all here to help America, okay?
That's my point for asking for more money, because I want to see more. I'm sure, we'd certainly like to see more of those points along that graph filled in with real data. Mm-hmm. Makes it very much more comforting to invest several $100 million.
Mm-hmm. It will happen. I wish I could tell you more, but I can't.
But I think it's safe to say that because of the way we're doing this, again, it's hard to kind of articulate it, but the way that we're doing it after the burn test, we're not going to look for several $100 million. We're going to look for a smaller chunk that gets us to the next milestone. We also, part of it is we also don't want to give up the company too early, but we just want to take very methodical discipline. So when someone looks at us and goes, wow, they did the feasibility study on no money, and it's perfect. Wow, they raised the 250, and they did an absolutely stellar burn test with no altitude information. What's it going to take to do that? 5 million, 2 million? Sure, we'll give that to you now because you've proved it along the way. Then you get done with that, and they're like, Okay, now we go to 10 to 20 million, and it's just we're happy just to take our time.
Yeah, and the other thing is before I start doing flight testing, I'm probably going to shoot it down to Louisiana, do some shake testing after the burn test. I don't want this thing falling apart midair.
So if I have a rocket or like something I want to send to space, and I'm looking for, or I have like a payload and I have everything except for the rocket, can I just like purchase one from you after these have been like tested?
Everything but the rocket engine?
Yeah, the rocket engine.
Yeah, that's the ideal situation where you're just coming to us and we're building it.
How much would that cost? How much would it cost?
Depending upon the size, we're estimating between, on the micro size of, maybe we'll get it under $1 million, but probably not. And on the big ones, probably under 20.
You're intensely focused on this burn test that's up and coming, and this seems to be proving a concept that's going to be very big. It sounds like you can make this at different sizes, to support different kinds of rockets. So if it works at one scale, whatever this burn test is, are those same principles going to work? Different rockets, different scales,
yes,
different sizes to someone who's not really
there are slightly mitigating circumstances that may require modifications for larger ones. But we'll find out once we start getting some of the stuff.
But the point is, if you're the company that's in the market for an Aerospike engine that has all the advantages, wouldn't you say, okay, we need it customized in these ways? We'll give you X, because that X is going to be much less than what you're going to end up having to spend anyway. So we foresee a lot of customization, but we see partnerships with companies that will say, here's what we need, here's the money to do it.
Yeah, because ultimately our business model is going to be on service, but initially it'll be a cost savings. So we're estimating between 30 and 40% cost savings between existing rocket engine makers, and certainly from the guys from Russia.
And we've even talked about and kind of started looking into the fact that maybe people might even lease the engines. They're reusable, right? They're an asset base. It depreciates, but again, not so much once you do the retooling of it, refurbishing of it.
It's supposed to be a surprise.
Sorry.
I got another huge question, which is, you say you want to build a rocket from scratch, right? Like, be very naive about things. What percentage cost is that engine going to be compared to the whole shebang? And maybe not a single case, but case by case basis. What is it in general?
See, I can't tell you for sure because I don't know the internal workings of each rocket company and what SpaceX spends. I know SpaceX does between 85 and 120 million per rocket that goes up. So you're looking at 20 to 30% of the cost of the actual rocket soup and nuts is the engines. But we may even save them even more money because he uses 9 different engines on the bottom. We would just have one spike all the way across. But that's just one case. Escape Dynamics, they're still putting up drones that are about the size of this table. So that costs probably be closer to half of putting it up and down because the material, it's basically just, there's nothing in it except it's a big fuel tank, that's it. So it's going to vary between companies.
You mentioned SpaceX. I know that they're very good at marketing their sort of fully reusable rockets, right? How that's just cutting the the launch price up by an order of magnitude. And I guess it's good to understand that, like, well, if you get that reusable engine, then that's like a huge chunk of that full reusability. That's that percentage.
I'm open to the idea, and I'm not an idiot in the sense that I know that Elon really wants, his company is his company, and he does everything SpaceX way, and everything's at SpaceX. So if it comes down to we can't work together, but we can still share ideas. I mean, if he gets it up there, and I can say, hey, we worked on it, and he allows me to say that, it's one step closer for humanity as a whole because he's already 30 steps up ahead of everyone else, and it's one step closer for us.
But hold on a second. If he came to us and said, I need 5 engines and you have a confidentiality agreement, there are engines, fine, black label it, it's yours, take it, we don't care.
They're very tightly integrated from top to bottom. So, do they even have any other contractors they use, or
practically not?
They do all their manufacturing.
Yeah, I think they I want to say they have 2 left, but I'm not sure if they got rid of those recently. It's not like I'm walking into Hawthorne every day. And be like,
but if someone comes in with an Aerospike, just think about the logical aspect of this. Here you go, you can have it, quiet. Or now, while you're trying to keep all these, and this is why you have all these deadlines and milestones, you have something that works, and it might not be the most efficient. You're looking for the Holy Grail. What are you going to do? Build it yourself? I mean, maybe, possibly, But it seems pretty easy just to say, fine, we'll take 5 of you knuckleheads, and be quiet about it. It just seems like that would be much more economical.
Branson, we'd love to just go and be the white knight. Hey guys, sorry what happened last year. Here's something so you don't have to use 2 planes and that stupid feathering maneuver.
He just pushed everything back. I just read today by a year.
Actually, that highlights a point that they thought that they could scale their engine. I'm sorry.
No. Sorry, you're already in. Go.
They
you don't have eyes in the back of your head.
They thought they could scale their engine to reach their goals. What evidence do you have that your engine is scalable if you don't have a working model yet?
That's a very good point. And I can't sit here and say, you know what, I have this, and this that tells me exactly, precisely it's going to be the case. What I do have is tenacity to overcome whatever comes in front of us, and I had the team to do it.
So theoretically, with what we've looked at already, it all indicates that
theoretically it's all there.
Fine.
But we all know theory is not the same as practice.
No proof yet.
So,
that's part of what
we're fully prepared for that. That's why we didn't ask for whatever we were going to ask. We asked for 250 instead of X, because we fully are prepared that, hey, it may not come out in March, it may come out in September of the following year. But when it does, it will address all of those concerns. We'll make sure, because we're going to be talking with everybody in between all of us. We're not just going to do it and be like, okay, now we got to find a client. We're already talking to everybody, finding out what they need, what are they looking for. That's why we're here today. So we're hearing questions like this, and we can be like, yeah, that came up again. Okay, yeah. So this is all part of
eternal feedback loop.
Yeah. And yes.
If it is more efficient, cheaper, reusable, probably there are more people, more companies working on something similar, or space agencies from China, India, Russia.
Yeah, China's watching this.
Boeing or Airbus.
I got a friend in the China media agency who's like, yeah, you better do it because we're waiting for you to do it. So
Are there more companies also working on Aerospike engines?
there are universities across the globe working on it and have worked on it. They've the supersonic scientists were brought in to work on the CFD analysis. His daughter did her thesis on this in Caltech. So it's everywhere. And it's like every other invention out there. It's already on the shelf, but nobody's pulling it down to use it.
Well, Firefly, the real answer in terms of commercially, Firefly's the only
That's the one that's
real
closest.
commercial.
They haven't cut any metal yet.
They haven't cut metal, but they're looking at that type of aerospike that we showed, kind of a hybrid.
And again, we want to help them. So it's not that we want to stop you or compete with you for doing.
Or tell you that your design sucks compared to ours. And this is a great point. If I can take it.
Sure. Yeah.
When we got together, we said, before we talk about all this other stuff we talked about today, what's our ethos? Like, what is our operating principle? Where are we coming from in this whole thing? And we spent a lot of time together speaking about it. And one of the things that we said from day one is, we are here as part of this industry. And every single person in this industry wants the same thing. Sure, it might be Mars colonization, CubeSats, nanosatellites, solar system exploration, moon, getting water, but it's about getting out there. And really, the story is about the future of mankind. I mean, that's the story that is at the bottom of this whole thing. And we said to ourselves, we're only going to support the industry. We're going to support all the players, rocket engine companies, rocket companies, whatever the case may be. We'll never say a bad word about them. Sure, if someone said to us, what's the difference between your engines? Sure, we'll be honest and say what we think might be slightly better about ours, but we're here to support the industry. And I think that's very important. And if we all take that viewpoint, and it sure seems to me like most of the people in this room are right there with us, it's going to only serve everyone. Not everyone's going to make it, but the ones that do are going to be that much stronger by having all of that good will,
And as we found that most of the people in this industry, the ones that don't will get absorbed into the ones that do, and will make that company that much stronger.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, the IP is the design and the materials? The shape of the spike and the materials?
Yes, the shape of the nozzle, how we use the materials, how it's put together, and yes.
What is the most critical gap or complication between the current state where you are to the desired state where you want to be?
Yeah, when we push that button and it actually works, that's the critical phase.
What is the gap? What is stopping you from the most important factor that is stopping you from going from the current state to the desired state? Pushing the button.
I'd say it's selection of materials. There's several in the running right now. selection of the ultimate nozzle. Even though I looked at the Spike, we're still open to a lot of different things.
We're not yet pigeonholed into something that we've decided on.
Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I'm waffling on anything, but we're just staying flexible on our approach. We've got the goal of we want these list of things to happen, and how we get there, we don't really care.
Right.
But it is kind of a windy road. Yes?
So if you did receive a SBR phase 2, then you must have had to have built some kind of prototype, right?
No, in the SBR with phase 1 was the feasibility study where we made sure that we can overcome all of these challenges, or at least it's feasibly possible. It's not just pie in the sky sort of thing.
Yeah, I didn't check. Did you go phase 2?
Yes.
So then, usually they ask for a prototype. They give you like $750,000.
Well, that's NASA funded.
That's NASA. We're New York State.
New York State, yes.
Oh, New York State.
Yeah, I know. It's like the SBR and NASA's are so much different.
And we have to be at a different stage to get those, but we're definitely eyeing them. They're throwing around a lot of money.
We think we'll be at that point in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of what year?
This year.
Where are you guys based out of? Do you have like a facility to build this giant rocket?
No, we're kind of piggybacking on SUNY Stony Brook right now, and some of our contacts in NASA through Rob and Joel and everyone else. I'm doing that on purpose because it's expensive. So we're kind of just.
So you have spaces that you're looking at?
Yeah, we have some shared space we're looking at here for executive offices. I've looked at a couple of manufacturing sites on Long Island because the idea is we want to bring manufacturing back to New York. And we want to not only bring back manufacturing, we want people to be proud of what they're making. Go home and say, hey, I'm working on the next space race or something like that. As soon as Sonneberg's like, good for you, we want to help you. The economic development officer for Long Island is the head of engineering over there, so they're more than willing to start working with tax advantages and everything else to get that done.
What kind of physical space would you need to do a burn test?
We're probably going to contract it out initially. Maybe we were looking at Raytheon, but we're not sure just yet. When I say not sure, there's a list of people we got to talk to.
We are thrilled to support and be a part of the NewSpace NYC. Beyond the name, the actual reality of the space industry, the new space industry, really the center of it seems to be New York City. And when Chris
if you guys got a warehouse in Soho, I'm glad to do the burn test.
Yeah, we're working on it.
When
part of our mission.
When Chris first said that we're going to do RocketStar.NYC, I was like, .NYC? I mean, we really want to pigeonhole ourselves. He's like, it's about being here. It's about actually identifying with NYC. And then we got associated with you guys, and we're like, this is exactly where we should be.
Yep.
And we're close to Jersey, so.
Yeah, exactly.
and just one second, just to push back on that for a second, because you were right. We're not pigeonholing ourselves just in New York. We are New Yorkers. This is a New York company.
Absolutely.
We want to support New York. But
we're proud of that.
We're not going to say, haha, California, you can't make rockets. We're not going to do that.
No.
So, yeah.
It seems like your organization is really manpower constrained. In other words, you don't have gobs and gobs of people to be designing rockets.
Not at all.
And your value add is the engine. Why not just concentrate on the engine and let somebody else who's already building rockets build the rocket and put your engine in it?
Because we have a lot more plans to do other than this.
But
that's kind of where we're going. We're not building the rocket.
Yeah, we're building the ethos of the standard of hypersonic travel and consultation.
Yes. So then other people will have their rockets and they'll just use our engine.
Yeah.
That seems like you want to focus on your intellectual property, and I think the intellectual property for you is the engine, because it's a whole other specialization, which is the rocketry and the dynamics and the physical
We're staying away from that.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
we're staying well away from that.
There's
we're going to give you the means and how you use it.
Yeah.
Good luck. We'll support you all the way.
I think it's fine.
Oh, it crashed. I'm sorry, it wasn't our engine. No, but in all seriousness, we won't do that either, because we're actually planning to do what GE does. They have sensors on the engine, so we can actually report back and say, hey, well, this didn't work right, or blah blah blah. Yeah.
And they don't build airplanes.
Right.
And now they're not a finance company anymore. So, yeah, that's interesting. And you lease an airplane. So, what do you have to say about this?
I think that makes sense. I think there's a diverse model between. There's a clear bifurcation between aircraft and engines. You asked what the value is on aircraft. As airplanes get older over time, value of the airframe kind of disappears, gets used up. Engines get fixed up and they keep going and going and going. So an airplane's brand new, 80% of the value is in the airframe, 20% is in the engine. 20 years later, all the value is in the engine. The airframe is worth nothing.
Huh,
And
that sounds like an important thing that we might have thought of.
The value is all there, and the value is in that metal. And it's sort of funny that GE is no longer in finance. It's like, well,
they don't need to be.
I mean, they got rid of the real estate. They're still in finance. I mean, they're
in the leasing business.
Yeah, they're in the
They're
leasing
not-
business.
yeah.
They're in the finance business.
Yeah.
Through and through.
It's a wonderful PR stunt, and I'm really, really impressed at how they came up with that and made themselves look so golden.
You guys talked a bit about your long-term sort of phase 2, phase 3 beyond the scope of this burn test and the Spike engine. And one of the things that you mentioned was bringing along this paradigm of hypersonic travel. And I'm just sort of trying to understand, is that, what does that entail exactly?
I got this. Yeah.
Sounds what it's saying.
So, even though we're client to client base, they can use different propellant. We're pitching this as a liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. So water can be used as the propellant. So this is basically get out of the gravity well engine. So you send your stuff over to Mars to make the water before you get there. That's how you get back off Mars's planet, as well as the moon, as well as asteroids. In between that space, I don't want to use an Aerospike. That'll take me forever. We're working with a company to utilize a fusion device and create a what is in a sense a fusion rocket. It may not hit ignition. We don't care. We just want to use the plasma and shoot it out the back. And the ISP is so large, it'll bring it from 2 years to 60 days to get to Mars. Yes.
Yeah. That's a very extremely hard problem in physics and engineering.
I know.
I mean, it is a highly unstable configuration, and you have to solve these very complex electrodynamics, Maxwell's equations, and Navier-Stokes equation, and
yeah,
I mean,
France is
putting $50
billion
to fix this. To claim that will use for propulsion sounds.
And this is going to be a touch point because if real physicists are like, what? No. Yeah. So
you have a slide on that?
No, because it's really like
it's the next stage, no pun intended. It's where we're looking at for the future. We have our work cut out for us, believe me. We're not in a position to talk about why fusion may or may not work, but we're definitely looking at it, and we have some people that are making progress where progress never was. By the way, this is the exact conversation that Wilbur Wright had, but it wasn't about fusion. It was about the actual ability to get a plane off the ground, and people, and it's just the archetype of saying, but there's no way you can do it.
But to your point, they achieved containment.
No, containment is one thing, right? But to stabilize the plasma in these very complex configurations and geometries for anything longer than infinitesimal amount of time.
But wait a second. He doesn't need to have a containment because what is the point of a rocket engine but to throw things out the back, right? So how much do you have to be contained is in the thrust chamber, and how long does it stay in the thrust chamber?
But Vivek he's a physicist, so
that's fine. No, but that's okay. But he'll understand it. How long does matter stay in the thrust chamber on an active rocket engine? In like less than nanoseconds is how long it stays in there, right? So if you have a containment for nanoseconds, fusion containment for nanoseconds, then you can have a really high ISP, like tens of thousands.
Orbit to orbit.
Tens of thousands.
I don't want to have this
Mars in 39 days. Mars in 39 days is what they're saying.
Yeah.
Russian geometries,
some million miles a day.
It's all out the back.
Yeah.
It's 1G acceleration all the way to
I think I'm going to leave it at that because if I start getting into design and everything, it's going to give away way too much.
So fusion is tough to talk about, obviously. Yeah. But the better question is, what is the bridge between what you're doing now and fusion specifically? Because it sounds like when you Google, space engines, there's a lot of different things people are talking about, and there's a lot of ways you can go fast, which sounds like what you guys want to do. So why is the next thing this fusion engine, which is kind of, people get skeptical about it naturally.
The Navy's confirmed all the things I need to know to create what I need. They've confirmed this company's ability to do that. There's also independent confirmation from 3 different universities that I won't mention because you guys will look it up.
So what does that mean exactly? Because this is something that you need to test, I imagine, like in the real environment.
Yeah, no, we're probably a good decade away.
We technically shouldn't even be talking about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have non-disclosures with them yet. We're still in like early talks.
It's so early to even try to speak about it more than that's where we're looking.
But I'm as excited as you are. That's why I'm talking about it.
Well, yeah. The reason it's so interesting is that you're talking, 10%, 15% improvement when it comes to the current Spike engine. But if you're talking orders of magnitude improvement over the current technology, not 10%, but 10,000 or 100,000% improvement, that is literally revolutionary.
Yeah.
And
the problem we were solved with was 2 problems. Problem we had to solve was 2 problems. One, getting off the planet, which is a lot harder than a lot of people think, and we all know that in this room and online. Then the second problem is getting back and forth between locations in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, you talk about 2 years, that's ridiculous. There's no way you can have a colony with a 2-year transit time, because by the time the food gets there, everybody's dead. So if you can do it in 2 months, 1 month, then now you're on the same level as people from England colonizing America.
I don't care about colonization. What I care about is the trillions of dollars. I didn't say billions. I said trillions of dollars of natural resources that are in the near Earth orbits that would be accessible with your engine. I would forget about the Spike. If you can make, if you can make your fusion engine a reality, you let Elon Musk send you to orbit, and then you take it from there, Mr. Investors, and we will get you those $1 trillion asteroids at a dime a dozen.
The only answer I have, well, you're not really asking me a question, but the only point to that I'll say, I can say to that is I have a non-disclosure agreement with Deep Space Industries.
Right. You're not deep space, in other words.
Right.
You're building the engine.
Yeah.
I have a non-disclosure agreement with Deep
And
Space Industries.
for us to focus on something that has a time period of 10 years, we really, well, who knows? I mean, it's always either a little bit longer or a lot shorter than anything. But the Aerospike is something we can do fairly quickly, prove ourselves, and then all the time we're still looking at the future and beyond fusion.
One final question. So I understand that the Aerospike is more efficient, but I don't understand why this is reusable and Belarusian is not reusable.
Okay. It kind of goes back to the whole pressure issue. If the bell could flex and expand in pressure to cover the difference in pressure when you go up and there's less pressure and the exterior pressure, then you wouldn't have to worry about that. But it's a fixed pressure versus the outside is constantly changing. So it's variable versus fixed. So you have to get rid of it because it doesn't match up one-to-one with your ejector combustion coming out the back versus the pressure on the inside. So
Why? Because it changes after use to the point where it can't be used again.
Yeah, you get all these eddying. You can't control it enough, so you have to toss it when you get to a certain point.
But you toss
Otherwise,
it
you
and you
fall.
can recover it and you can use it again.
But how efficient is that? I mean, every time you have to fish it out of the ocean, every time, or look, Elon, what Musk is doing is incredible. He's literally flying part of his rocket back and landing it.
He's trying to.
Yeah, he's trying to. And I hope he does it because I just want to see that thing happen.
Happen. 23rd, April 23rd.
Yeah. So, and again, I hope it works, but wouldn't it be better if you can just like, hey, pilot the Bombardier, take off, come back down, and refuel, go back up again?
Yeah, but if it's a $20 million engine, you put a parachute and I mean, you spend like $200,000 to go to pick it up, right?
But then you have to put it back together. Then you have to do all that work versus rolling into the hangar, refuel, repaint, go back up.
Transportation costs. Once you hit the ocean, it's like it's almost destroyed, right? It's like really bad.
Which is why Elon Musk is landing these on a barge.
Right.
That's
Because
why.
you don't want to get into salt water, do you?
And then you run into, you have to have enough fuel for the comeback to slow yourself down as you get closer. So there's that much added weight, you have to put that, there's all these different things that would not be necessary if you just bolted our engine on the back, flew it up. You can just glide it down if you really wanted to, but I prefer to have some, lift to trajectory my way down, refuel, go back up again. The Skylon is probably the closest thing to what we're trying to do, but they're trying to do something equally as ridiculously hard. I mean, instantaneously cooling air, basically.
Will your rocket work to come down as like Elon's doing with his rockets to like reverse thrust and kind of like slow the landing?
I think ours would be more appropriate on the back of, like, if you look up the Venture Star, something of that nature, where it's more of a shuttle sort of format. But yes, it could be used for that particular format. And with the advent of thrust vectoring, it makes it that much easier. Because if you're coming down the wrong way, you just thrust vector up, and then you
Virgin Galactic would be a great.
Yeah, no, I can't say anything about that either.
So I was just curious, what you guys haven't really talked a whole lot about yourselves, and I'm sure we could just dig into the website. But I guess I'm just curious about the kinds of people who. I mean, everybody's interested in space here and has big dreams, but like the people who say, you know, we actually have what it takes. We have the background, we have the knowledge, we know the kinds of people who can do it. So where do you guys come from? Like, what made you want to do this, and why do you think you can do it?
So I have a degree in physics from SUNY Stony Brook. The people, let's go back to the technical stuff first. So you look at the three people that I picked, kind of be the tip of the spear to help guide us where we needed to go, was Joel, Deanne, and Tim. Joel Hurwitz is the deputy principal investigator on the Pixel instrument on the next rover, and he's currently driving, I think, I always get the mix up, the Curiosity rover now. He jointly discovered water on Mars with Deanne and some other colleagues. Tim discovered water on the moon, and he's currently running I think the LRO around the moon. Rob Briskman is the guy that told me, hey, you better get on this. Founding member of NASA.
Co-founder of Sirius XM.
Right, thank you. All the connections that he brings onto the table. And then we have more on the other side of the fence, which is more of the financial management guidance marketing. Orland Boston, he's done startups before. He understands this metric. He's the youngest partner there ever was at Ernst & Young. He's on the board of the USO, which he shares a seat with I think Northrop Grumman CEO over there.
Has a spacesuit named after him.
Yes, he does.
Right.
Yeah, he didn't know that either. Yeah, the Orland spacesuit. Yeah, I think it's because he was born the same year that they started using it. Anyway, then you have my friend here, David, who's I was going to call him my chief marketing officer, and he's like, no, I'm not in marketing. I'm in strategic experience engineer. And he's like my mouthpiece. He's the guy that, when I can't encapsulate it the right way, he's the guy that puts it out and gets it out with the right energy.
And the challenge that I have, that we have, it's always we, and something that we've addressed in the industry with the X-Prize think tank, et cetera, is, what's the message here? We have an Indiegogo campaign. And we're trying to raise money through that. But, we're not taking stuff into space, so if you give money, we'll take, a little rocket up there or stuff like that. No. It's a little less tangible, and we have great rewards, but we're trying to sell the promise of space and the adventure of space and getting in on the ground floor with something, even in a small way, where you can see it develop. It's a tough message to get across. So we've been trying to talk about it, we're trying to refine it, we're really saying, what is the message? Well, the message is absolutely future of mankind. I mean, so then there's different ways to build from that. What's the other message? The other message, and we're picking back on what the industry is, the other message is Mars, right? Yep. Journey to Mars, hashtag Journey to Mars, but then what you come up against there is, you go to Mars and you die. Like, the first people that are going are going to die. And so we have these challenges that we're really wrestling with on a day, nightly, losing sleep over. How do we take this thing, future of mankind, the journey to Mars, the promise of space, and make it something positive, make it something that's evolutionary in the minds of people? So we go to Mars, what are we going to do there? We're going to have a colony, we're going to mine minerals, we're going to get water from the poles, and then we're going to use Mars as a stage for Jupiter, some of this, the water-bearing satellites of Saturn, Enceladus. On Enceladus, they're saying there's probably a massive ocean underneath the frozen surface that's just massive because it's spewing out all of these ice particles that actually created the E-rings of Saturn. That's freaking awesome, But how do you entice the normal person or the person that's interested in space to invest a little money in a rocket engine? And I think out of everything that we have right now, today, I'm talking about today, at least in my world for sure, is that's the challenge. That's really the challenge. If we can crack that nut, if we can help to crack that nut, it will only help the industry, and obviously it will get us to where we need to go using that method.
Yeah, and one more thing to add to your question about, what does it take to be part of something like this? I want to point to Mike Cassandra over there, who has nothing that looks on paper like he can do this other than his passion and his drive. He and I were talking about this for a good year and a half. And I said to him, if you want to be part of it, you're in it. And he's one of the hardest working son of a bitches I've ever met. So if you work hard and you're passionate about it, you can.
Good things are going to come.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a couple of different directions about this kind of larger scope of what you're doing. There's kind of Mars, and there's general solar system exploration maybe. There's kind of different stories there, and you're talking about this need to balance, kind of a short-term economic return to really getting the right story and getting people on board. And you might have been hinting at this whole kind of like Mars One hype, where you have all these people who are going to Mars. And it's like, in my view, I think you'd probably agree, it's not like a super inspiring picture. Like come to Mars and.
And by the way, we said we weren't going to say anything bad about people. It's a total scam. It just is a total scam. I mean, I'm just straight up telling you, without a doubt, we have looked into it. I've looked into it deeply. I've read the interviews with the people, and it's a freaking scam. And that type of stuff, there's no place for that. It's only gonna make it harder. It's only gonna have people that are the naysayers go, see, I told you we weren't going to Mars. I told you it's bullshit. All these guys are, it's just it's a pie in the sky. So we have a lot to overcome. It's challenging, but we just have to do it. But they upset me a little bit because they're getting a lot of money and they're never going to get there.
Yeah. So what?
Right. Well, exactly. We're not going to let it bother us, but it does. It's a little prickly thing.
So what if they get billions and billions of dollars and people want to see people die?
But they're not going to go.
No. They're not going to go.
That's the whole thing.
But if they have billions of dollars, and everyone's like, I'll sell you a rocket.
Then I'd be like, yes,
They're
go.
not going to
Then it just creates like
everything is. They're just not going to. I don't believe they're going to get that far. So then you're saying, so what if they don't get that far? But what happens is if they were to get billions, it would really be bad for all of us because then they really scam huge amounts of money that should be going to us and Ragnarok and some of the other people here.
When they die, they'll sue everybody, and that'll really set everybody
I
back.
agree with that, but it's the industry. You have to look at it as a holistic thing.
We don't want it to be like
have
a
to
Lehman
look at
Brothers event or something.
What do people see? What do people see? They're going to see, scam, people taking their money, nothing happening, and then you have to overcome that. So it's not so what, it's also not woe us. This is just something we have to deal with. We have to deal with it. So it's going to make us stronger because we will deal with it. But it's not a so what. It's something to reckon with. It's what's out there when you talk to someone on the street. Then the thing is, well, is the person on the street the person that's actually going to give us the money that we need? And the answer is no. What the people that are going to give us the money that we need are the people like the people in this room, $1, $5, $10, $50, $100 that say, gosh, this is a great idea. I want to be a part of it. I want to get the beautiful patch. I want to get at higher levels the other things that we have on offer, but I just want to be a part of it. I just want to be a part of it. And that's the only way that I can.
That's why we did the mission patch, because like with Apollo and everything, they had everybody who went up had that particular patch and no one else. So we're making these patches for that reason. We're not going to make them again. Hopefully nobody will copy us, but anyway.
So we're about at the hour mark.
Great.
Okay. I don't know if you wanted to finish, keep going with your slides, but we want to keep everyone thirsty for more information.
No, I just needed to point to this.
So we have plenty of time now. I mean, we have until whenever. So just,
whenever we get kicked out.
Just letting you know.
We haven't got kicked out yet, so we're just
sometimes less words more. I don't know if there's anything else that we want to say, but if there's any other questions or anything that's sticking in your mind, like we don't want you walking away saying, I wish we would have had this.
Do you have an Indiegogo campaign, or is that something that
It's ongoing right now.
So it is.
Yes, we got
When is it
4
end?
days left.
4 days left?
40. Whoa, no.
And it's actually proving now, it's not the engine that's proving difficult, the stuff we're doing with the engine, it's actually the Indiegogo campaign. It's something that we're having some major challenges with getting through to people and getting the right channels to let people know what we're doing.
Mike, you have a comment to that?
Yeah, that ties back into your question. I'm the director of our community relations for the company. So I get all these questions that come in. And when Mars One had that meltdown, the interview came out, that was the first thing I got. Why are you guys different than them? How is this not a scam? I just put $50, $100 on these guys, and they're going to take my money and run with it. How are you different? And it's not that we're chasing different money. It's that moment bred ill will in the community that's already not excited to donate to these kinds of programs. They get excited when something big happens or when there's an explosion. The Antares rocket, that blew up Twitter. But if you go on there right now, nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about space on Twitter or Facebook unless they're really involved like we are. And the people who are already not interested are even less interested because of Mars One. So we have to build that goodwill doubly as hard and doubly as fast in order to get them reinterested so that we can actually turn this around in the online sector.
So what's the key here? I actually believe, Mike, it's a great point. The key is for Lon to get that thing on the barge, right? The key is for like perfectly successful cargo missions to the ISS where it's hashtag a year in space, right? These things are going to recapture the imagination and the inspiration that people get. So the more milestones, another reason why we're supporting the industry, the more milestones that we can build into popular culture as an industry, the more people are going to get interested.
And just to go to the negative side, scams like Mars One, like in 1903, the Wright brothers had their first flight, and people had heard so many scam first flights that they didn't believe it. And so to go along that route, I think is extremely cancerous for space and the colonization of Mars and all the other activities. Allowing scams to not be identified and roundly criticized by the industry pollutes the entire industry.
Yeah. And to the point of the Wright brothers, they weren't really concerned about flying. They were concerned about controlling flight. So that's kind of where we're coming in. We don't really concerned about flying the rockets. We just want to, build the engines to support the rockets.
And that was one of the great achievements of the Wright brothers, was that they were the first ones with an airplane capable engine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and their flight systems are still used today. Yeah, I mean, seven iterations of companies that bought them up, but they're still the leaders of flight control. So yeah, you had
I guess my question is, I guess I'm a little confused by the consumer focus of trying to fundraise at $10, $50, $100 at a time. I mean, the product you have is not or the product you're making is not a consumer product. It's a business product, right? It's definitely B2B. It's B2B to businesses where $20 million is a rounding error, right? And it's as hard to raise $250,000 as it is to raise $1 million, as it is to raise. I understand I don't want to give away my company, part of it, but going to consumers, I feel when you say, give me $10, $20, $50 for X, and I'm going to do something. It's sort of it's. I feel like it's easier for Mars One because there's a trashy pop component to it, and people get it. If you're making a pencil for your iPad, it's a consumer product you're making. I get it. If you're making a nursing bra, I get it, right? But if you're making a rocket for a big company, that's I guess a long-winded way of saying why even bother engaging the non-space community at all?
It's a great question, and what we realize is, and we have been mixing metaphors, we're not engaging necessarily the non-space community. In fact, we're not, because people don't get it. So then you say, well, who are you engaging? Well, let's just take a metric. Let's just take an Instagram metric. 10 million people follow NASA on Instagram. So you can say right there, there's 10 million people that are really interested. But then you say, well, what's that real number? Well, the real number is any given photo of theirs gets between 10 and 20,000 likes, okay? So those are people that not only are part of that 10 million, but they're people that are going on every day that have a passion about it, okay? That's what we're going for. And we don't need 10 or 20,000 necessarily. We might need, a couple thousand. And that's what we're trying to break into. We're trying to break into those people that are like, wow, for $100 I can be a part of this? It's a rocket, but the rocket's going to be used for all these things. They get it. They get it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we're not just looking to Indiegogo to create our financial concerns. We are looking for people and sharing equity and finding angel investors to get involved in this. We wanted to open it up on Indiegogo because we wanted to open it up to people to be a part of the next space revolution. We wanted them to look back and say to their kids, hey, I did something like this. I was a part of this. And have the T-shirts and everything to prove it. So that's really the reason why we did it ultimately.
Can I actually add on to that? So I'm Mark Jackson. I'm the founder of Physica, a new physics crowdfunding site. So I set up the site as Kickstarter for physics. So it's to crowdfund for projects exactly like this. We're talking about working with them for doing the next campaign. And what they said is absolutely true. Is that the public, they read about physics in books, they watch movies, but there's no way that they can actually become involved. And so if they can pay $50 to become part of this new engine, a lot of people would.
That's ultimately what it is. It's
viral advertising too. I think it's probably the best effect. That
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, I mean, we've gotten so much people that have given us new ideas of who to talk to next. Like the Reddit we did the other day. Somebody gave us a new forum to go talk to and get our message out there, basically. So yeah, it's just another way to reach the people that we ultimately want to help.
How much are you focusing on New York City for raising funds as opposed to other places?
I'm not New York City centric at all. You know, it's in terms of, because we want to. This is an engine that's going to affect humanity. It's being made in New York, but it's going to affect humanity as a whole. So if we get funds from China, if we get funds from Indonesia, we get funds from Russia, we get funds from Ohio, it doesn't really matter to us. We want people to be a part of this.
How are you reaching out then to other places besides New York?
One of the problems we're running into with our campaign, we've spread out ourselves as much as we can, but we feel that we haven't reached enough people.
The sweet spot.
Yeah, because we've hit the science communities, we've hit the different places that we feel that would want to see this, but it's been very U.S. centric. So we'd like it to get out to the rest of the world so that they can understand what's happening.
So if people are going to help and they're going to donate money, assuming that your Indiegogo finishes and you get all the funding, what's your plan? Like, I mean, you have schedule? Do you know who you're going to hire? Do you have the lab equipment you're going to use? Do you know what's your first problem that you're going to tackle?
Finish the CFD analysis, which we're in the middle of right now.
Okay.
And they called me for a check yesterday. So, no, but in all seriousness, this stage gets done, we answer one issue, we then understand what we need to do to finish the next issue of the nozzle and do full geometry and fluid testing and everything else. And then we get that done, and all of this is still just a few professors and a few students who they get full credit for. So if they want to graduate with a PhD in astrobiologics or whatever the heck it is, they can use this as part of the thing.
Yeah, but that becomes part of the problem because since you're trying to create IP, yeah, they have to publish papers on it, right? If they have to graduate with a master's or a PhD, they have to publish papers, so some aspect will become public. So it's the trade-off, right? You
It's
want
the trade-off, but
experience or you want the students?
There's enough of it in there that they can publish and not give away too much that'll interfere with patent processing and everything else. Plus, on top of that, we've got the whole heft of the State of New York University who wants this IP, and they're sharing it. I forget if it's 40 or 50% of the IP ultimately for this iteration of the engine.
Okay.
Which, like, you know, as we know with Apple, it's never the first generation that's the real workhorse, it's the fifth or sixth. But they want this IP to happen so that they get not only the capital, but also the recognition. They can go to their alumni, they go to their future students and say, hey, we're the Rocket University. And I want that to happen. I want them to grow. I want them to pull in students. I want them to be able to have this ability to do that so that I then can create a pipeline of people that I can train in the university. And if they want to join RocketStar afterwards, they can. You know, most of the people who go to the University of Stony Brook, and we're also talking to Cornell and some other universities. They live in the surrounding area. They're not from California. They're not from Canada. So they want to work locally. So I would then offer them jobs the same way Computer Associates does with a lot of the students at Stony Brook as well.
I thought the original, sorry to interrupt, you gave a great answer, but I thought the original question was, if you want
What's
to
the
raise...
ultimate plan, right?
No, I agree, but you want to raise $250,
Mhm.
right? If I give you a check for $250 tomorrow, your goal is to raise $250, so why aren't you talking to me or people like who can give you a $250 check tomorrow instead of going to Indiegogo?
Oh, I am. No, I am. I'm doing that as well. Whoever gets it first, great. But and it's not so much that I'm whoever gives me the money first. I'm specifically looking to private equity people for partners in that space because this isn't the first time we're going to be raising money.
Right.
So we're going to need help to find money on the next thing because we're going to need money so that just in case the 30% deposit gets put down for the engine and the customer's like, you know, I don't want to use you. Can I have my money back? And we can actually do that after we built the engine and we used up all the money, because we'll have that backing from the VC. We did it with Indiegogo because we want to put this out to people. We want to have them involved in this. And, you know, it just creates good, for lack of a better word, flow. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
How soon can you do this? If the check comes through, or Indiegogo?
It's happening now, whether the money comes or not.
Burn test will be what?
Burn test will be
1 year?
either later this fall or early next year.
That's if you have the check today.
That's if I have the check today.
I would say by a year.
But even if I have the check in the summer, it's the same schedule, because they're still working on it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So does the check go to your company as much as it goes to Stony Brook?
It goes to the company, and then I use the company to then pay whatever I have to pay to.
Because I can tell you
university.
that Stony Brook, if you hire one student, you have to pay overhead, right? So the student has a certain stipend for the summer, for the year, and then you have the overhead from that. So you can only get like one or two students, right? It's $250, and then you got the materials, and then you haven't even rented out the equipment yet, right?
We've mapped this out all the way to prototype. We've mapped out how many people they want to use and the expected budget. And then I added a factor of whatever to get us some extra money just in case they were wrong.
Right.
So your point is actually a good point, and we've already made those decisions already ahead of time. Or at least like a general area. It'll become much more honed and specific as we get to that point, but we've got it planned out. Yeah.
I just find myself surprised that this model is working so well in an academic environment, where it sounds like a lot of your workforce is coming by people doing dissertations. Whereas, in my experience, like even at pretty, well-known universities like that, there tends to be kind of a problem. It's like the incentives are a little bit different. Like you're trying to move along your career, you're not necessarily as vested in the outcome of that product. And I feel like if you're trying to make this, get the engine work, it's like you need to have people who are like dead set on that outcome. At the enginering level, right?
Yep, yeah.
And I'm sure you've got like amazing students working on this. I mean,
no, that's a very good point.
I'm just wondering how that model works.
I didn't realize how lucky I was to be working with these guys till I started talking to other people and all their problems that you're discussing. But I basically just gave them the money last year for the feasibility study. Then I'm like, do I need to do anything else? They're like, nope, we'll call you. And within like 3 months, I had it. I was like, what? And then, so they are crackerjack. They've been doing this a long time. The guy that is heading it up, he's the liaison between the university and private businesses, and has been working for Raytheon. He's worked for other companies. He's actually built this thing called the Sit and Go, which is like a walker that helps you stand up. And he's working with hospitals to get that into the community. So he understands the whole soup to nuts process. He understands the time frame. He understands how to push people the right way to get things done. So to your point, he only selects the grad students that are just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have no lack of passion on any level of anything that's happened so far. It has been passion like you can't believe. Dedication, perseverance, never say no, this is the way we're going to do it, we're challenged, never a problem, or, it's never a problem, we have a challenge, here's how we think we can get over it, it's a really can-do attitude.
But they get it. I mean, number one, the grad students put this on their resume that they built this sort of thing. That's a head turner right there. Number two, we get this done, the engineering department's going to get a lot more money. So they understand that's coming their way.
The school loves you guys on the same team.
The Alumni Association loves me right now. They're calling me every couple of weeks. They're like, can you get in front of these people? Can you do these things? And I'm happy to do it because they have a huge untapped network, and Jim Simons is on their board, and all these other people that would love a project like this they can get behind. We just have to prove out that we can do it. Because I was talking to them in January, and I was like all set to like, all right, you ready to sign a check? And they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was so early stage. So the desire is there, the backup's there, the support is there. And we just have to now connect the dots.
So I just want to say...
She raised her hand.
Okay.
Are there plans for a model rocket enthusiast kit?
Complete with CubeSat.
I'm actually seeing Bree Pettis in 2 weeks, and I was actually thinking of doing a 3D model. So just because somebody, I think Sean, you suggested this, right? Just like build a 3D model.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, that was you. Excuse me. Sorry. No, I thought that was a good idea because then it can show me holding it, and then the fact that I'm holding it with Bree Pettis, the guy who made MakerBot, who's like a friend of a friend of a friend. It's such a weird, we're being introduced to this phrase. He's known it for like 20 years. there are no coincidences, there are only cosmic connections. And
We take them all seriously.
if I had another 20 minutes, I can explain to you how that work would bring.
Synchronicity's our friend.
Yeah. So we're just trying to keep that energy going forward, you know?
Awesome. Does everyone know what NewSpace NYC is? Who doesn't know?
Tell us anyway.
So we are a New York-based accelerator for space projects. That's what we aim to do with the community. So we want to be like the Y Combinator for space. Is anyone not on our mailing list? Because I have a sign up here that I would like to get people on. And we hold events every Friday now that we're doing this. This is our Space Talk series.
I think you have a meetup also, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a meetup group. We're part of the Commercial Space Ventures meetup group. We're trying to combine with them.
So what's the difference between the two of those? Give us the differentiation.
One is more active now, and we took over the other one.
What
is this?
Hostile takeover.
Oh, so you kind of took them over.
Yeah.
So what do they do, or what do you do now on that side that you don't do on this side, or
We
whatever?
just have more activity.
We basically just leverage the members that they already had, which is 100.
You should be putting the camera at yourself when you're talking.
And you have to go to the university?
Yeah, we like half of our family members are part of Columbia.
Hey, Chris. Chris is from
Chris's.
So I'm a Columbia student in computer science, and I have a startup here in the lab, which is how we all get access in the year, which is great. I guess one of the big emphases, like what's our differentiating factor from maybe past space meetups, is that our real intention is to connect the dots between investors, startups, create value for everybody involved. Because we're really just starting to notice there are a lot of people who just have this contagious vision. And the finance is also out there, as we're starting to find out. Like New York City has this combination of people who are very wealthy and quite bored sometimes. and actually, it turns out they don't want to invest in an app company. They want to invest in something they can talk about, tell their friends about.
Something real.
And, it's something real, and space is really that story we're finding. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Lux Capital, which has offices on Madison Avenue, I think on 40th, they just added $350 million to their fund, so they can specifically go after space companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Write that down.
Yeah, and our last panel.
Let's get them here. Let's get them here next time.
Seriously, they're good people. I've talked to them out in San Francisco. I met Shaheen out there. They're very direct.
We have a pitch night coming up in like a month and a half.
Yeah, invite them. I would totally, yeah.
Thank you all very much, by the way, for
Yeah.
taking the time out and giving us the environment.
I just want the questions going forever.
They will.
Thanks for watching.